We're so happy to have you here to talk about all things Skull Island. All right, thank you. I'm Dan Casey from Nerdist.com, and I'm thrilled to be here to talk to all of you about one of my favorite new anime-inspired animated series. And if you're a fan of the Monsterverse, if you're a fan of Kong, giant monsters, all that goodness, this is the perfect show for you. It's now streaming on Netflix, but it's not just going to be me here talking today. As you can see, I have many amazing guests here. So first up, we have the Director of Development at Legendary. It's Anna Halligan. We also have Executive Producer Jacob Robinson. From Powerhouse Animation, the Supervising Director of Skull Island, Willis Bollner. And last but not least, you know him from Gumball. He's going to be in the upcoming Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie and a little show called Skull Island where he plays Charlie. It's Nicholas Cantu. All right, so as I mentioned, I'm a big fan of this show, big fan of the Monsterverse, big fan of all of these giant kaiju unfolding around us, and I really loved Kong Skull Island, so I was excited to return to this universe. And I'm someone that loves to know how the monster sausage gets made. That's a bad term. I'm not going to use that again. I like knowing how shows go from concept to completion. So, Anna and Jacob, I want to start with you. Where did the kernel of an idea for a Skull Island animated series come from?
Yeah, the year was 2019, I want to say. There was kind of a new regime of executives at Legendary, and we had this feeling of, we have all this amazing IP. How can we build out franchises, like really give more to the fans, bring in new fans, and we were looking at a lot of properties we had. We had an animated series on Netflix called Pacific Rim the Black, and it was sort of like, well, what else can we do? And we brought in our producer, Jacob Robinson. We have a deal with him through his company, Tractor Pants, and kind of asked him for ideas. And Jacob suggested a Monsterverse series, and I'll kind of let you talk about it.
Yeah, I sort of had an idea to do Goonies on Skull Island, was sort of the genesis. I think a lot about the Animatrix and sort of when you have an established universe, the ability to sort of play with genre, to play with tone, because you can always come back to sort of that ground universe, and what we could do there to sort of expand for the new audience. And listen, as a child of the 80s, I'm very much a product of the Amblin era. And so I went to my friend Ryan Duffield, who I knew two of his 4 favorite movies were the original King Kong and Jurassic Park, and thought Ryan's Stone would be perfect. And in a matter of days, he pitched a high-level concept for this show, and it was incredible, and we were off to the races.
That's awesome. And I'm curious as well, like obviously it's very cool to see Skull Island in live action, but what about animation in particular seemed uniquely suited for a story like Skull
Island? What really interested me, listen, obviously there was the ability to do incredible battle sequences, which Willis will be able to speak to, but was actually sort of to swing in to the more intimate character moments. I think with the films that Legendary does so well, when you're doing these $200 million, there's just such spectacle and epic, and to sort of find this small little corner of Skull Island and really sort of explore character relationships, that was the thing that interested me most to do it, both in the series and in animation.
That's awesome. Now I want to talk about the animation itself because I'm a big fan of everything the team at Powerhouse does, and I love this anime-inspired look. And I say anime-inspired, we're here at Anime Expo because anime is global popular culture. It is influencing everything around us, and it's really cool to see how that interplay plays out in shows like Skull Island. Plus, if you saw Kong Skull Island, the movie, there's so many anime influences there. Evangelion, Studio Ghibli, a direct reference to Akira, so it's all part of that DNA, and it's really nice to see that come back around here. But Willis, I'm curious, can you speak to how you came on board the project and how you folks found the visual style for Skull Island?
Sure. I had just come off of another show that Powerhouse had done called Seis Manos, and it was after Jacob and Legendary kind of approached Powerhouse about working on the project. I received the Bible that Ryan Duffield wrote, and I really just kind of fell in love with everything that they wanted to do with the characters and the story. Jacob said that Goonies on Skull Island kind of feel, and from there for the art style, we brought in a freelance artist named Felipe Magana, who has a pretty distinct animating style, and that was pretty integral in kind of developing that style that can still kind of lend towards more fun aspects of the show, but still kind of keep it within that world.
That's awesome. Was anime inspired always kind of like the thought process of like, this is the way we want to trend with this, or did you go through sort of different iterations of like, well, what if we did it like this?
I think that was kind of always where we were gonna land, you know what I mean? I think we kind of branched out and tried some different things here and there, but it always kind of went back that way.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we'll talk more about that in just a bit, but I also want to talk to Nicholas, one of the stars of the show. This has such an amazing voice cast, and I'm a big fan of your character, Charlie. He's definitely sort of our POV into this wider world. I'm curious, what was it like for you when you first got a script, first came aboard this project, and what aspect of Charlie were you most excited to bring to the forefront?
Yeah, I was really excited once I got the first script. I didn't know it was going to be an anime-inspired series, so when I saw like the first look of Charlie, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be sick. And then seeing animatics and seeing how it all came together, it was like, dude, I'm a part of like a really cool show, and I love King Kong, and like I just felt blessed to be a part of something like this. But with Charlie, you're saying he's like our eyes into this world, and his eyes are very much like what the. Can I curse on it? What the fuck? Let me get out of here. Like, I just gotta leave, dude. It's going on. It's crazy. There's a giant monkey. What's going on? So I would say his thing is more so like trying to escape the island, and also seeing somebody who's not fit for adventure be on an island full of giant monsters. I think it's very relatable to see something like that. Kong Skull Island was one of my favorite movies I've seen, and in that movie you're following this like core of people who are here for exploration, and you kind of get that with this show, but with Charlie's character it's very much he is just along for the ride.
Yeah, it's a heck of a ride to be on. I also see there's some kids in the audience, so that will be our 1 for our PG-13 rating. Apologies to any
Okay,
kids.
I'll
We'll be
stop.
good. Also, real quick, while it's on my mind, if you didn't get one when you came in, we have an amazing poster to give away, so if you didn't get one, make sure you grab that on the way out. And also, if you see there's a couple microphones here, we'll be able to take your questions for an audience Q&A towards the end, so start thinking of them now. Now, in the meantime, Nicholas, I'm curious, you mentioned the first time you got to see the art for Charlie, but what was it like when you first got to see the series as a finished product?
Oh man, it was great. I watched it once it dropped, and it's incredible. I mean, I always love working on animation because you kind of get to see how it evolves throughout the process, and going from just words on a page to the final look, it's incredible. And the way that the show's come about, and Powerhouse's incredible animation, I mean, it's a spectacle to behold. It was really fun to see.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Charlie is just one of the amazing characters on this show. I want to talk a little bit more about this incredible cast we have. Jacob, Anna, Willis, I'm just curious, talk to us about the characters that we have here. I'm curious, like, how did you work with Brian and company to sort of figure out, oh, we want to make sure we have a nice spread of these different archetypes? What was the biggest challenge there in sort of unlocking the core cast?
What I'll start with is that Annie was the genesis of this Annie and dog and their relationship. That's what Brian really wanted to explore. He sort of built it out from there, and I think Charlie is sort of the teenage everyman into this world that's very much of the Amblin-esque prototype, and the best friend who complements him in many ways, and the triangle. What you guys fill in there?
I know with Annie, one of the things that I particularly was drawn to with her in trying to come up with her look was some type of iconic piece of her wardrobe that she had, and I kept coming back to that captain's jacket, and tried a lot of different variations of it, but kept coming back to more of that kind of naval jacket in the blue. And where I was trying to go with it was like that's like her father's jacket from the boat, and it just being a piece of that history from everything that happened with her being stranded on the island that she kind of keeps with her. So I'm glad that.
Yeah, and one of the things that I got so much joy out of was seeing how the costumes kind of evolved as they were on the island. You can see how Annie has kind of pieced together things over time that she has found and made them work for her. And similarly, Charlie and Mike only look that nice for, you know,
Yes.
one
Like
episode.
2 seconds will be
Yeah,
done.
that was, I get hot easily. And them being on an island with this incredible sun and what I can only assume are incredible temperatures. Like Charlie's jacket, I was like, that's coming off immediately. And Mike's probably going down to the undershirt. You saw Cap, he had the skull cap, and all of that got lost just because so every design iteration I'd be like, give me hot. We should tone that down.
I'm glad that someone's looking out for their like relative comfort as they face untold prehistoric horrors on this island.
It's bad enough dealing with monsters, but if I'm sweaty too.
Oh,
Come on.
God,
If
sticky.
you're gonna run from monsters, you should be comfortable.
Exactly, that's what I've always said. I'm curious, which of these characters kind of underwent the most iterations or changed the most from sort of concept to completion?
I would say probably, well, in terms of iterations, just in terms of how many different designs we had for them within the show, it's probably Mike, because just for every state that the character goes into, we have to have a different design for that. So from this, the Hawaiian shirt that he has on here to the red shirt and the cone jeans that you see in the second episode, those are 2 different designs. But then he also gets stung by the Kraken, so that infection gets worse throughout the show, so we have to have different iterations of every time we see him, how much worse the infection's getting, and then we wrap him up, so we can have that, and then so I think that he kind of had the most design sheets, I'll say, throughout the production. But in terms of kind of trying to get the character, kind of nail that character, it was probably Andy. I think was the one who kind of went through the most, really just trying to find that character and really trying to nail that.
Just like you have so many amazing voice actors there.
I was awesome, I'll just say that. I had a good job. I'm here for like a reason. I guess with Charlie, like being cast for that, it was just an audition like any other. I can speak from the other side of the casting experience. I don't know what you guys were looking for with the characters, but for me, it was just an audition like any other. I recorded it in my closet on my phone, and you guys like what I did, so now I'm here and I'm Charlie on Skull Island. That's what it is for me. Yeah.
And I will say that, well, I think all of the voice actors did a fantastic job, and I think that it made our job, Powerhouse Society, it made our job easier in terms of fine-tuning some designs, and in the storyboard and animation process, they give us so much to work with, like working with the takes that would come in. It just was like, oh, okay, the way he said that, the face has to match that. You got to have that expression right, and maybe the character's doing something that's more broad or extreme here, because we just had so much to work with from that audio side that it just made our jobs that much easier and that much more fun.
And I think that he was the only one who hadn't done a voice work to date, so I think that really helped us, especially because we did this during the pandemic, so everyone did this remotely, so having the ability to or to know how to sync up and everything, it's a lot easier to coach people who've done it before.
Nice. Well, that's awesome to hear how like sort of even the performance can then inform the animation instead of having them done in tandem and then trying to mash everything together. Well, I want to talk a little bit about, much like in Sex and the City, how New York is a character, Skull Island's a character itself on this show. And it's full of all sorts of mammoth monsters, colossal kaiju. So I want to talk a little bit about the creation of some of the bigger stars of the show. Yeah, I love this graphic where you just get a sense of the horrifying scale of the Kraken and Kong. So talk to me a little bit about the development here, especially with that Kraken, because that is just, in the very first episode, you're like, how big is this? This like looks like a dwarf Cthulhu in size. So tell me about the visual development there.
Well, I know that with all of the creatures, we wanted to try to come up with more original creatures for the Monsterverse to add to that, and with the Kraken specifically, with it being the major foe for Kong. Kong is about 185 feet at this particular time, and so just making something that would be a big enough foe for him. And like with every iteration, we obviously were fine tuning the design, but we would always come back to this model sheet and just be like, a bit bigger, a little bigger, too big, a little bit bigger. And so it's just trying to really make that as imposing an enemy as we could, and then the size played a huge part in that. And it was a challenge to try to storyboard something like that, especially when you have something that's 185 feet, something that's close to like 220, 230, and then you have like a 5-foot character. Like you can't get that all in the same shot. So
Yeah, we need the IMAX cut.
yeah.
It's funny to think back on the conversations we had around the design of Dog, who is my favorite character in the show.
He's mine too.
Because it was this line that we wanted to walk of, okay, he has to look menacing and dangerous and scary, but also you want to cuddle him. And so it was kind of, and it's like, he's not a dog, but is he a dog? So there was all sorts of balance in that.
I really like the relationship between Dog and Charlie because I still don't know why Dog does not like Charlie. But
I don't know either, man. It's tough out here.
But to me, it was always really funny. That Dog just had this unbridled anger towards this one character. And during the production, I kept referring to him as, do y'all remember the bull from the Looney Tunes cartoons? They're just angry for no reason and just never blinked. Like I was like, that's Dog. And we don't know why he's angry, but it's just Charlie's just getting the brunt of it. It was fun for me.
It was fun for me too. I mean, Charlie's trying to get this dog to like him so bad, and it's just not going. You know, like you ever go to a friend's house and the dog just like won't stop jumping on you? It's like that's what it is, but the dog's like 50 feet tall.
Noted for future visits to that particular friend's house.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm curious with this as well, looking at all these monsters and characters here, what was the most challenging one to bring to life?
Probably the Kraken, just for that sake of it's the big bad of the whole season. And so just trying to make sure that it's menacing, it's bad enough, and that it's a proper foe. And one of the things that Ryan would keep saying is like, just make sure it has a punchable face. Just make sure that it just has a punchable face. And I would take that into the design, but then after a while I really just started not liking it. I think we did too good of a job of just punching him. I don't like him. And so it just trying to get that right. I think that was one of the more challenging creatures to design.
I mean, he looks suitably tentacular. I think that.
I like that word.
Thank you. It's been copywritten. Please just Venmo me if you use it. But yeah, I have to imagine that's. I think just he also gives us a great reason to hate him pretty immediately.
Yeah.
So yes, in addition to his very punchable beak face, whatever you want to call it. But I want to move on before we get into how we brought Kong to life. I want to talk a little bit about Kong himself because he's at the core of this series. Nicholas, I want to talk to you about your character as a unique relationship with Kong on this show. How he sort of he can tap into this weird Skull Island logic and figures out a way to help mastermind how to use Kong to their advantage. Why do you think that maybe Charlie has this unique insight?
I think it's because he's trying his best to just make it out alive, and part of his plan is like, hey, let's make friends with the big giant monkey. I feel like that's the way we're gonna do it. I like that he's kind of, I guess, trying to outsmart Kong because you see this giant ape and you just think there's no way he could ever come out on top of that thing, but Charlie uses his wits, he's trying to get to college, he's trying to use that college brain to outsmart the island, and part of his plan involves using Kong, or I guess, honestly, he's just like a pro instigator. Like, the Kraken and Kong have been like having beef for so long, and he's just like, we just gotta get these guys to fight, and that's all that it's gonna be.
I mean, we know from Kong Skull Island that Kong has a demonstrated history of eating all sorts of cephalopods. So this is nothing different there. So just an ancient enmity. So very smart to utilize that. But I want to talk about bringing Kong to life because this is such an iconic character in global cinema, global popular culture. How do you approach trying to put a unique spin on Kong while still staying true to the DNA that people instantly recognize?
It's a fine line you have to walk because you obviously want to do justice to the entire MonsterVerse and everything that has come before with King Kong, but also it's trying to work within the story that we have. I mean, if you look at that flashback episode, like he's been through some stuff. So just really trying to do justice in both areas with that.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned walking, and I know we have a clip that we're going to get to in just a moment, but is there anything you can do to sort of explain what we're about to see and sort of the process of how you folks brought some of this animation to life?
So I'll give I'll try to stay brief. I'll give a kind of an explanation of our production process. The script would come in, and I and the other directors would kind of break it down into different sequences that we would take our notes and notes from the legendary Brian, and we kind of take all that and give that to a storyboard artist, who then would go through the rough board process. And this is just this goes through a few rounds internally, but it's kind of the picking the shots and making sure that everything is kind of in there kind of first one, and we see what works and what doesn't, and then that will go through some revisions before we go to a clean process, which is taking those rough drawings, not doing super pristine clean drawings, but just making sure that everything is readable and everything kind of makes sense there, so that when it goes to the next part of the process, which is animation, everything is there that the animators need to do their shots. When we get to animation, a majority of it is given to our outsourcing partners who do the animation. For this project, we work with Studio Mir. Majority of that is given to them, and then we take some shots in-house and we do the animation for them there. And then in this video, you'll see a rough pass and a clean pass on that animation. Then after that, all the animation comes back, and then we do our compositing pass on it, which is the lighting and the color grading and any effects and anything like that. I wanted to give that preface so that I wasn't entirely talking over the stuff you're about to see.
All right, let's roll that beautiful beam footage.
This is my favorite scene because it's got monkey bars.
Took some time to figure out those monkey bars.
Yeah. So then we go to the clean boards pass, which again, like I said, not entirely pristine, but this is enough information for the animators to work with. And that shot stayed rough there because that was an in-house shot that we knew we were going to be working on internally. So some of these shots were given to outsourcers, but then some were done in-house. And for the in-house ones, we have the rough animation, like this one was done internally.
He's so graceful, man. Look at him.
This was another internal one. And then this one. And then from there, we get the clean animation. This is from the outsourcers and from Powerhouse internally. This is the pre-composite, so this is what we get back from the outsourcers. This doesn't have a final pass on lighting or anything like that. But you see the finished backgrounds in there, and there's some early camera work with some of the background assets moving around. And this is the final composite. You can see how much fog we added.
positing plus the camera moves and what a difference.
Yeah. We really wanted this being kind of the first full shot that we see of Kong. We really wanted that to be kind of like every kind of shot. So we took that into Blender, a 3D program, integrated that with the 2D.
So from what we just saw there, I mean, obviously that's condensed so we can share with the panel, but how long does that take from sort of what we saw at the very beginning to that final shot?
I have to kind of break it down. So all in all, from the initial kind of rough storyboards until we get something back from outsourcers, that could take anywhere from 6 to 8 months-ish. And then the final composite on it adds maybe another something like that. But you have to think that there's 8 episodes of this, so that could stack up. So it's kind of
Wow, very, very cool to see that like labor of love in its earliest stages to what we finally get to see on the screen. Very cool to know how it all comes together.
And the team did such a great job with it. Everyone at Powerhouse, they just like this show was kind of a labor of love, and everyone just loved the characters so much. Just I think to see it was great.
Oh, definitely. I mean, even just like the small things, like the way the camera shake adds that like sense of impact and velocity when he jumps down off the monkey bars. That's very cool. But I also want to talk a little bit about, I know we're talking a lot about animation. I want to talk about sort of writing and tone. And I know that writer and creator Brian Duffield couldn't be here today, but a big fan of his work. If you haven't seen Underwater, criminally underrated movie, go check it out. It kicks ass. Sorry, kicks butt.
Why used our curses?
Yes, I'm so sorry. My apologies. It's fantastic, but I also love the tone that you folks managed to achieve with Skull Island. It's sort of, I think Kong Skull Island is a good example because it had that sort of swashbuckling nature, sort of a little pulpy. It doesn't feel overly self-serious, but there's a gravity there. So I wanted to talk about how you worked with Brian to maybe find the right tone for Skull Island.
Yeah, again, it's sort of, I'd love to take credit for this, but this is Brian. I mean, it started with Goonies. He added a little more Jurassic Park and sort of found that he wanted Harold, but the heart and the sort of the comedy of it, the banter was there from day one. There wasn't a lot of futzing around with it or guiding. Like, no, this was very much sort of his tonal vision. I think again, the hope was it's a different Matrix, but Rogue One or Technical Field Lane, trying to find that space and that tonal differentiation so that it did feel like it was its own little tiny corner.
Awesome. Well, this show is also, apart from, there's a lot of nice banter and comedic beats to kind of like let the steam off a little bit after some of the tenser moments, but there are so many awesome battles and fight scenes and dramatic moments in this series. I'm curious for the whole panel, do you have a favorite fight or moment that stands out to you from the series?
Should we go down the line? Sure. Let's go down the line. Okay. Favorite fight. Well, I gotta say, seeing Kong swing on the monkey bars was probably my favorite moment in the whole series, just because it was so funny to me. Like the fact that he has a jungle gym, I just think it's perfect. It makes so much sense. But my favorite fight was probably our final battle between Kong and the Kraken. I thought that was really well, boarded. Like all the poses that they hit and the way that the battle plays out, it really kept me on the edge of my seat. So I'd say the final battle is my favorite.
For me, it's in the 3rd episode. It's the river chase leading up to Kong eating the killer croc. Yeah, just because everything that kind of went into that chase, I think everyone did a really good job with that. And I don't want to call it my favorite moment, but one of my favorite moments is after the boys go over the waterfall, think they're safe, they're high-fiving, and the croc just swan dives in. It's so every time I saw that, whether it was the boards or when the animation came in, I would have to stop and laugh because it just made me laugh every single time I saw it. And I think that just in terms of how that sequence, how the tension would ebb and flow and go up and down, and then leading up to that moment where it's kind of the first time we see Kong, but we tried to hide him as much as we could before that reveal. But yeah, I think that's probably my favorite one.
In our cuts, we had a little sound effect of a like boing, 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 boing. That did not not make it to
Did
the
not make it to the
final.
final, but it was like the boy, and then there was like this squawk scream that the crowd was like, "Mah!" And again, stop it. And just laugh.
I think fight for me was Dead Chameleons, especially seeing it in the anamorphic. It was just so cinematic and changing colors and it smacked against the rocks. But I will say my favorite death has to be the whale.
Yeah, that was crazy.
The whale is a great moment because you have that line of like, why did they do this? And my working theory is that he's a dick. I think that the chameleons were my favorite fight too. It's very sick, but I don't know what this says about me that I like it so much. But Kong rolling the rock slowly over the chameleon was really iconic.
Deliberate,
Yeah, big fan.
Kong is nothing if not thorough. He gets the job done and makes sure it stays done.
Yeah.
Well, Nicholas, you mentioned the final fight, and I want to talk about that a little bit, but first, I think we have a clip to share of that, so let's check it out.
Clip of the final fight.
I believe so.
Okay.
I might be wrong, but...
It's just common.
Oh my God, Kong, it's like some purple rain there when he just destroys that dragon. Holy cow.
Exactly what Chris had in mind.
Yes, this is the hidden meaning of Purple Rain coming to a YouTube.
If you go back and
video.
listen to that song, there's so many
Yeah,
references to kind
the
of.
clues were there the whole time if you look really closely. Listen to it backwards, it'll become apparent. That's a fantastic way to kind of like close out the big action of season one, but I'm curious about sort of what the future holds. It definitely seems like folks like Annie and Irene maybe made it off the island, but what do we maybe think happens to the other folks? Do you think they stand a chance, or they also see through Jackson Pollock paintings like that poor Kraken? Anything we can tease about potential future adventures?
Yes, well, we have a lot in mind that we would love to share. So you guys have to watch, and hopefully in season 2 we'll discover all sorts of those things. We have a lot though in the larger MonsterVerse kind of on the horizon. The next Godzilla Kong, the New Empire, comes out in March 2024. And we're also currently in post-production on a live-action MonsterVerse series for Apple. So that's coming soon too. But hopefully a lot more to discover on Skull Island as well.
Fantastic. So if you haven't yet, make sure you go home and stream Skull Island on Netflix if you want to see a potential season 2. So fingers crossed for the future, because I'd love to spend more time there. Now I think we're going to open it up to the audience. So if you have any questions that have been burning, you're dying to ask, there's a microphone there and a microphone there. If you come on up, I will. We can chat. If you have cues, we can give you A's.
Of course.